You're on mute.
Oh, yeah.
Hey guys.
Hey there.
Hi, AJ.
Hey Becky, how you doing?
Good. Where is everybody's here?
Let's see. We're waiting for Bob, Melody,
And Jim.
and Jim Walton.
Did you hear from Melody?
I didn't hear from her about this week. I did reach out to her after our last meeting just to make sure there was there wasn't something we could be doing to accommodate whatever, changes to her schedule. I think she's taking a new job and she gets called into Boston, I think, and she's having to travel to Boston, I think more than she had anticipated when she took the job. And unfortunately, those meetings are not very, they don't happen according to a predictable schedule. So there's really nothing for us to do in terms of like shifting our day or anything. I don't even know if that would have been possible, but so I don't know if she'll be on tonight, but we'll see.
She is.
There she is. Great.
And Bob responded today. He said he'll see us soon.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Bob will be on, I'm sure.
yeah.
Hi, Melody.
Hi, Melody.
Hi, Melody.
Oh, hi.
You didn't have to go to Boston today, I take it.
No Boston Day today. Thank you.
Good. All right.
I hope you don't
Georgia.
have to go on Friday.
Oh, I know. I see you survived Timbuktu, huh?
Oh, I did. Yeah.
Mhm.
Nepal. Yeah. It was fun. Had a good trip. It was great. It was an adventure. We started in the low elevations and we spent a couple
Yeah.
weeks, walking through some pretty primitive areas, and then eventually worked our way up to the mountains, to the high mountains, and spent about 10 days hiking through the mountains. So it was great. Thank you.
Are you totally ripped now?
I was in pretty good shape before we went. Yeah, I mean, I was definitely in good hiking condition. I actually got back all the weight I lost, so it took about a month, but I got back the weight I lost. So I guess
How much did you lose?
About 5 pounds. Not too bad.
Okay.
We ate well. In the Nepalese, everywhere we went, they always came out and wanted to give you seconds. In fact, there were times, and I always took seconds, A, because I like to eat, B, because I didn't want to insult them. And
Yeah.
I ate really well, but we burned a lot of calories.
Yeah, sure. Is it the kind of thing you want to go back, or is it like I've done it once and it's a trip of a lifetime and I've got it out of my system?
Well, we're talking about it. One of the guys has already decided
Uh-huh.
he's going back next year, and of course, he's trying to talk the
I
rest
see.
of us into it. The logistical
Uh-huh.
part, I'll just have to think about it and see what my budget's like and what other travel I do with my wife. And
Right. Yeah.
and if I go back, I'd probably do it for less than a month.
Mhm.
But that's only because of my family and my wife. And
Mhm.
it's a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
I was used to the routine, so I could have probably stayed a couple more weeks, but
Mhm.
I don't know. It's one of those things you just got to kind of get yourself motivated for. I know, Jim,
Yeah.
you're much more motivated than I am. I know you'd like to get back.
Well, there's a big difference between 1995 and 2022 or 2023. Now, I wouldn't find the same world that I so appreciated that I found in 1995, which was sort of the old Nepal. And, no villages had electricity, let alone, satellite, Wi-Fi, internet, and all the rest of it. I mean, that was not even, that along with many other things. And it just wouldn't be the same. So it would take a lot of convincing to get me back there.
People will still be the same, but you're right about the electricity. There's solar panels everywhere. I mean,
I know, yeah. There weren't back then. There were just only on police stations. There were solar panels and that was it.
Jim
All right.
Walton, you
Well,
look like Bohemian Rhapsody.
What was that?
I said Jim Walton looks like he's in the music video Bohemian Rhapsody.
Little breeze going through the house here.
Black on black,
yeah,
Jim.
it's the black on black,
Oh.
Jim. All we see
Yes.
is your face.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Floating head.
Yeah.
It's a good look.
Very new wave.
There you go.
Mhm.
Well, maybe we can start with minutes and I'm sure Bob's going to be on it any minute. But,
We'll call him.
okay,
So-
that'd be great, Becky. November 29th minutes, everybody should have gotten them from Susie a little while back. Let's see. I had a couple. I had one thing that I think needed to be updated. So on 1C,
Two.
I'm sorry, 2C, yeah. The proposed budget is up by 3,000. And I think you had a little placeholder in there for
Yeah.
percent increase. So I'm calculating that as an 8.6%
Yeah. Mhm.
increase.
That's what I
Does
got.
that sound right to everybody? Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
all right,
Bob's having computer trouble. It's
okay,
booting up now, but it didn't work the first time, I guess. And so
okay,
hopefully it'll be any minute.
all right. And then on 3F, you calculated a 10% increase. I'm trying to recall, so you're saying aside from contract obligations, I just wonder if there could be like a little bracketed note that just maybe makes clear that that's excluding all
Right.
salaries, which I think we understand what you mean by contract obligations, but I'm just thinking maybe a reader
Operating.
might not. What's that?
Maybe we should use operating budget
Yeah,
that are proposed, the
Yeah.
proposed operating budget.
Or operating expenses,
yeah,
the proposed operating expense, budgeted operating expenses, because that's what it was, right? It's her operating expenses line.
yeah.
It was a couple, and it was also the community policing, so.
Policing, I knew.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
Um,
And we never did decide how we would fund that, did we? All right.
No, we said we'd bring it up again. So I think when it comes time to, after we've done our
Yes.
reviews and it comes time to the budget, we should do that. I
And
do
that's-
remember just having like a brief mention of what the overall change to the police budget is encompassing the police, because I think there was an exchange where I think Bob threw out a number and then I think I did a little calculation and came up with a different number. So I'm wondering if we could just add that, and I'll calculate that while we're talking. Does anybody else have?
You mean including the salaries?
Yeah, exactly.
On the bottom
Because I
line,
think there was a comment that I think Bob was asking about Kristen about sort of like a significant increase in their overall budget, and he threw out a percentage that I think was significantly larger than I think it was. And so I chimed in and said it's actually this percent, and I think there was just a little math error that he had done. So I think it did get discussed, and I think for the purpose of the minutes, it probably would be useful for people to understand that in terms of the overall police budget, it's a pretty modest increase. So I can figure that out if people agree that that would be a useful thing to add.
The one thing about that is that most other budgets do not include the salaries.
Right.
And it would, I'm not
I
sure
hear
that
you,
we want to, unless we point that out to other budgets.
Right. Becky?
Yeah, and this is only Kristen's second time doing it. Usually we don't address any changes to the budget because it's everyone else's budget is determined by the formula.
Right.
Except for the police department. And
Schools,
this year,
right.
I think from what George has said, they'll all come in at about the same as the police, potentially with the numbers that we already have from last year and the minimums and maximums. So, but usually we don't add that.
Right. Okay, yeah, I don't think it's necessary to add that.
So the correction is, aside from the contract obligations, the proposed operating budget is up by 2,529, a 10% increase. Is
Yeah.
that what we said? Okay.
That sounds good. Yeah. Anybody else have any other suggestions or corrections? Jim Hemingway?
Oh, this is very minor, Susie. 9A, just a typo. We would likely see these meaning expenses. Just to add an S
Okay.
there. Yeah, just.
Yeah.
And AJ, I had a question
George,
about,
go ahead.
I had a question about, number 2, when we were meeting with the chief and we were talking in B about, well, we were talking about the, need to replace the defibrillators. And I just wanted to ask a question. I think it's probably Becky's question. I was reading in the paper the other day that there were funds that were distributed to all communities, fire departments for capital expenditures, a one-time kind of grant thing to help them with capital expenditures. Are you aware of this? Have you heard of this?
I don't think Becky heard you. Becky was on the
No.
phone.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was looking at the minutes.
Becky, George has a question for you about capital expenses
Well,
for fire.
I read in the Gazette that the state had made disbursements to all communities, fire departments for capital expenditures, a one-time funding mechanism. And I was wondering if Shutesbury had received any money from that and how the chief was going to use that money.
Did they say when? Because I think Walter had ordered some radios, but when was this supposed to occur?
It was happening now from what I read. I mean, it wasn't specific dates. It just said the towns were awarded. It listed the big towns around us, but apparently all towns are getting something. And so I was wondering, if we're talking about these defibrillators, this might be an opportunity to upgrade them all. And then capital planning and us, or somebody could talk about how we'll fund the replacements in the future. But if we've got this money, he's got this need. I'd hate to think that we might be spending money out of the operating budget for it when we can just do the upgrade right now with new funds.
I think before we conjecture about it, we need to find out what those funds
Yeah,
are.
that's why I want that question. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
the question.
sorry, I don't have the answer. I hadn't heard about it from Lenny at this point.
I could look it up in the Gazette and then figure out what the name of that fund is and go from there. So I'll take that.
Really? Okay. I'll try and go back. I'll go back through them. I'll try and find it for you, Susie. I'll send you something.
Okay, great.
Right. Anything on minutes? Anybody has? All right, looks like Bob is coming on. Hey, Bob. You're on mute.
Yeah, I had to finally go get my iPad because my computer is
Hey,
screwed up. So,
all right. Well, the only thing you missed was we've gone through the minutes and I think we were about to make a motion to approve them. Do you have anything on minutes before we do that?
I reviewed them earlier in the week and I didn't, nothing stood
Okay.
out. So I could just
All right.
abstain from that vote.
Okay,
I'll make a
So-
motion that we approve the minutes as amended.
Second,
okay. George, you want to kick us off?
Robert, I decide.
Chartier abstain.
Groves abstain.
Hemingway, I.
Cashew, aye.
Close your eye.
Walton, I.
Okay. I think that was what,
Five, two. 5-2.
5-0, 2 abstentions? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Susie. Let's see what else we have. Okay. Next up, okay. So I think we've got the track update. So I think probably most of us have heard at least some of the kind of latest developments since our last meeting. The Amherst Town Council reconsidered that previous vote and approved an amended version of that motion, which basically gave the region the flexibility to use that additional $900,000 allocation for a track project that either incorporated artificial turf or grass. So, those funds have been allocated by the town. I think just to kind of remind everybody in terms of kind of next steps, this region has until January 16th to raise an additional $2.2 million to fund option 3, or presumably some other option if they were to go that route. And I think we don't know what their fundraising, at least I haven't heard anybody provide an update on the private fundraising side, but we know that at least 1.85 million has been allocated by committed by the town of Amherst through 2 separate votes. One was a CPA allocation, and then this most recent gift or transfer of free cash. So I think Pelham also maybe, actually I shouldn't speak to that, I can't remember. I feel like I'd heard that there was a small CPA request that had, but from one of the neighbor towns that had
$10,000.
already occurred. Is that what it is? $10,000?
I
Okay.
think it's
So
10 or 12 or a small
all
amount.
right. So, I mean, I guess without knowing what the private fundraising number is at this point, I guess we'll probably hear an update, I'm assuming, at the 4 Towns meeting this week. Bob, question or comment?
Give you some. One of my good friends is the chair of the
Yeah.
Pelham BA or CPC, and he said they had a vote that was unanimous that they were not going to contribute if it was a artificial surface. So I have no idea how that plays into all this and whether or not the Shutesbury CPC will have a vote about that or will have some guidance about that. But it seems like there's a lot of variables still in this situation.
Yeah, no,
The paper, maybe
I
you
think that's right.
was that
I think
sorry.
can
go
I
ahead.
just correct one thing? can I just correct one thing there? I think if I understood some of the sort of back and forth comments at the regional school committee meeting, I think the Pelham CPA may have taken a vote on this. It wasn't actually, as I understand it, the region actually hadn't submitted a CPA request yet. So I think it was almost like they took a sort of like a straw vote on what their intention was. But I think technically the region hasn't, and I don't believe they've submitted a request to our CPC. So I think that hasn't happened yet.
But I also think that, in fact, this money cannot be transferred legally until town meeting approves it anyway. So all the Pelham CPC can do and Shutesbury CPC can do is make a recommendation to town meeting, if I'm correct.
All right. Becky, did you have a response to that?
I saw Doug Slaughter when he dropped off the CPC letter of intent.
Oh, so that just happened?
It happened last week. Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right. Do you have any information about when they're going to be, I assume they're going to have a deliberation about
They're meeting
whether
tonight.
to,
I think
Tonight, okay.
CPC is meeting tonight.
all right. And sorry to pepper you with questions here, but do you have any, would you be able to speak to what the amount of that request was? or-
I didn't break open the envelope.
Okay, that's all right. All right. Anyway, so it sounds like that's another update that we'll learn about shortly. Susie,
And the decision about spending those funds really is up to the town. The committee cannot not forward the request if it fits into the categories of historical open space housing. So
Recreation.
I don't know if there's any thought of whether Shutesbury is going to do a CPC request outside of annual town meeting, but all of that plays out there and it's up to the town.
all right. So I think in terms of what's going to happen next, I think, yeah, I mean, I think there are, Bob said there are a bunch of variables at play here. I think that's right. I think I understand that the Amherst Board of Health made a kind of formal, I don't know if it was a prohibition, but a recommendation to not install synthetic turf. So I don't know how that's going to impact things, but I think we should, obviously I think there's just a number of things that have to play out. Jim Hemingway?
Isn't it the case that if two out of the four towns say no to this, then that defeats the whole thrust of the number three option? I know also that Leverett is not in favor of this as well. I just thought that if two towns vote it down or say no, then doesn't that sort of stop the ball rolling, so to speak, in that direction? Or am I?
That's not my understanding, because my understanding is that back in March, the region voted a debt authorization that had two components to it. One was a $1.5 million, and I'm just looking at my notes here, to support, to make improvements to the track itself. And then had a terms that said, if this additional $2.2 million is raised by January 16th, they will pursue option 3. So I think that was all written into the debt authorization that took place back in March. I think Becky can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there was a period of time that all of the towns had to raise an objection. None did, including Shutesbury. And so I don't think, Jim, to answer your
okay.
question directly, I don't think um, uh, there's sort of a scenario where 2 or 4 towns can vote down this project at this point. I think the point has already been made that any additional contribution that Shutesbury is going to make to the project, I assume, is going to be, whether that's CPA funds or some other, contribution from other source. I think those would be, need to be voted on by the town.
Hmm.
I think somebody had their hand up, but there. Okay. Any other comments or questions or anything we need to discuss? I have to assume this is going to be a topic that comes up at Saturday's meeting. I would at least hope that we would hear some update on the fundraising numbers to actually see if they're on track to move forward. Maybe Steve, do you have any information about that?
So the school committee has requested a couple times information from that fundraising group, and they send us nice letters that tell us what they're doing, but they never give us an amount of what they've gotten so far.
Okay. So is it fair to say that beyond this, like roughly $1.8 million that has already been committed to the project, that the region doesn't have any other information about how far along they are towards meeting this $2.2 million goal?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Bob?
Yeah, there's one more point which I'd like to raise, which is that the last time I heard about the cost, because I had raised the issue of potential increase in cost for all the options, but particularly option 3. And I think the last time that the region spoke to that, they said they were including a 10% contingency over the original estimate, which is quite old at this point. So I think that at some point, someone is going to have to address that part of this issue, which is, what potential increases might now come to play in this concept. I mean, it's all been designed and everything, but it hasn't been quoted, and that could be significantly change the math. So something for us to find out about if we can.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. All right. Any last comments or questions on the track? Okay, that brings us to the just any prep that we feel like we need to do for the 4 towns meeting. Everybody knows it's on Saturday. Everybody received the Zoom invite to that? Okay.
As well as the 8:30 Zoom.
Yeah. Right. So we're going to meet from 8:30 to 9 with Becky, right? Select board and school committee will be on at that time as well. Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, this will be different, I guess, because I don't think we're gonna have to deliberate about our sort of our position on assessment method, I think. I have, we have pretty well developed kind of talking points about kind of our position on the modified statutory method. So I'll make sure that I bring those to the meeting in case some town tries to kind of reopen and kind of go backwards and rehash this whole discussion. But I don't know. I don't have any reason to think that's going to happen. I don't know if anybody else does. But.
The guardrails, what about?
Yeah, so I think that is going to come up, the guardrails, and I don't know. I think it's probably worth just taking a few minutes to discuss that. I think it's fair to say from our earlier discussions and folks should chime in if they think I'm mischaracterizing this, but I think it's fair to say that none of us felt like the guardrails were critical or needed. Does anybody disagree with that?
No. That's what we said.
I think I personally would not be concerned if the district feels it's really important to implement them. Again, I personally don't have a huge objection to it. I don't think it's I don't think it's a big problem. Again, I don't think it's particularly necessary, but for some reason they seem to feel it's important and seemed committed to it, despite the fact that received a pretty lackluster reception from this guardrails committee that met a couple times over the summer. But I just don't feel like it's that important for us to fight about if the region is committed to implementing it. But that's just my own opinion. So Becky, what do you think?
I felt Doug Slaughter out on this question when he's stopped in. So I believe I said to him that there didn't seem to be a strong response from the towns about the guardrail issue from what was reported back to the finance committee, and that I was wondering what the administration's position was on it. And he said that they're hoping that it won't be, that he hadn't run all the numbers for the assessments yet. He said he's hoping when he does finish running those numbers that they don't see any major unexpected changes to a specific community. And he said that if it's, it probably won't be Amherst, but if any smaller community is impacted to a large degree, that would be cause to raise the conversation. But he was hoping that that shouldn't happen this year.
Okay. That's helpful. Bob?
I may just say, I think that this guardrail initiative, which has been really, I think, mostly pushed by the administration of the regional administration, is an attempt for backsliding into something that was closer to what we used to have, which was a kind of a fixed amount per student for all towns. If the guardrail would provide that kind of relief under circumstances which I'm not so sure, just like we all are not so sure how often or likely that circumstance might be. But according to the spreadsheets we saw, that was going to be implemented right away. But those numbers, as we all know, were not really reliable. However, I think that what we fought for is the statutory method with the 5-year rolling average. And I think that the guardrail system would actually violate that agreement in a significant way if it did come into play. I think we made a concession last year because of the transition, because they agreed to go to the full statutory with the modified statutory, that is, and we would allow basically Pelham to pick our pocket last year. I don't think that we should allow that to happen again. I don't think that we should. I think we should stay with our position, which is we support the modified statutory method, which already does include a minimum payment, a significant one for all students. So the guardrail system would increase the likelihood of that minimum payment being more of a significant portion of the assessment. So I don't know why we would want to do it. I don't think that the town of Amherst is ever going to be affected. Just towns like us.
No, it's never going to impact Amherst. We can be assured of that, because they'll always ensure that the overall regional budget is at an amount that won't increase their allocation anything close to 4%. So it's never going to impact them. Agreed. I do think it's not unreasonable for the region to want to build some protection for, which could be ours at some point in the future, for some community that's going to experience greater than 4% increase in their allocation. I mean, I don't know. I understand your point, Bob, which is that, you know, we've got a methodology that we think reflects the appropriate balance of kind of per pupil and wealth factor, you know, community wealth factors, and totally, I think there's complete 100% consensus around that point. I just think that it's not unreasonable for the region to say, let's protect a community if in implementing that assessment method, they experience an unusual increase that could really be burdensome to them. It doesn't seem to me to be that objectionable, but anyway, I've already made that point. So Jim Walton.
Yeah, just a question. What do we know what the impact of the guardrail concept was for this current fiscal year? Whether it kicked in at all, or if it did kick in,
It
what
did.
impact it was?
Yeah, it was 60,000, 64,000.
We gave.
Yeah, it was-
64,000.
It was Pelham was significantly over the 4%, and we were significantly under the 4%, largely because we made this big, huge jump from 65% to 100% modified statutory, which obviously was going to have a big impact on our assessment. So yeah, it did impact us. But I think last year was an unusual. I mean, this current fiscal year is an unusual year because there will never again be a year where we dramatically change the underlying assessment method. Hopefully there won't be. So I think for that reason, this year was an unusual year.
Yeah,
Does that
I
answer your
guess-
question, Jim? Or-
Yeah, it does. And I agree with that. I guess I interpret the reason or the rationale for the guardrail concept a little bit differently from what we've been talking about here. My sense was it was a way to get the 4 towns on board with going to full statutory, or this, with the 5-year rolling average. As opposed
I think
to looking for another angle on continuing to do what we've been doing.
Right. Susie?
I don't feel like we need to spend a lot of time or fuss on this because it's not likely to happen. And so rather than taking a posture, I think we can let this go. And if it starts to kick up something that we didn't anticipate, then we can deal with it. But it's taking up our time, and I don't think we need to.
George?
Can I take up our time for just 1 minute on this subject? Last year, 64, we would have got 100,000. I just want everybody to be clear. Our budget could have decreased by another 40, but we agreed because what we were asking for was actually would have given us a higher assessment than if we went with the 4% last year. So that's an important point. I wouldn't characterize it as being contradicting the method we have. It's a guardrail for those rare years when a town is adversely affected. I don't think it really changes the formula in the 100% method that we're using now, but it does protect towns occasionally, because when we look back and look at the numbers, it doesn't happen very often, but on occasion it will, and it would eliminate a lot of the politicking that goes on. How are we going to deal with this? We have a town that can't handle this. So I'm just saying we shouldn't just out of hand oppose it. I think we would need to talk about it in the future if this comes up, because our town is one of those towns that's going to see very large population increase from the numbers we're getting from the elementary school. And we could be one of the towns that would benefit by having this guardrail.
All right, so look, in the absence of knowing what the calculations are for FY24, I think we're all assuming that the region is going to bring numbers Saturday that are going to show that the guardrails aren't kicking in for FY24. Maybe they will, and then we will have a discussion to have. But I think I guess we can wait and see what happens. And I wonder if we're gonna get the budget in advance of Saturday's meeting, in which case, if we do notice that, oh, look, there's a town that's hitting that guardrails criteria, then I think we're gonna have to discuss that Saturday morning before the meeting, because I think we are gonna, if that is the case, I think we're gonna need to know what our position is. So let's see what Doug Slaughter's numbers show. I assume we'll get that in the next few days. Anything else that we feel like we need to prepare or discuss in anticipation of the Four Towns meeting? George?
Well, I just remind everyone, historically, when we go to these meetings, they will ask each town to comment about their town, what's going on in the town, current events, and a lot of times towns also address how they're preparing for the next fiscal year's budget and what the process is. So it's something we just need to be prepared. Last year, I don't think they did, but historically, most meetings, they go around and they ask each of the chairs, somebody from each town to just talk about the financial picture. So something to think about, AJ, before Saturday. I don't know
Sure.
unless anybody here has something that we want to say.
Jim?
Do we expect to have a budget from the administration before the meeting, or not?
I feel like that's usually what they do, right? Like usually like a day before we get some slides, right?
Yeah, the PowerPoint presentation that we'll see.
The PowerPoint. Yeah.
Steve usually forwards what is sent to the school committee.
Steve, can you help us out here?
We don't have that yet because we don't meet until next week.
Okay. Okay. All right. Is there anything unusual that Steve, that you're expecting to be raised Saturday's meeting?
No, I
Okay.
haven't heard anything
Okay.
weird or anything
All
of that sort.
All right.
The middle school roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they did forward that that presentation. So yeah, it sounds like that'll be a topic. Okay. Susie?
Usually we are creeping very close to $25 per thousand, but all towns had their values go up and their tax rate go down. And in fact, I don't think we are now at the highest tax rate of the four towns, but I'm not sure. But that will probably be mentioned. And, you know, Shutesbury engaged a lot of stuff last year. We got a lot of stuff done. And the bills will be continuing to come in. So we know those things are pertinent to our town.
Yep. Okay. Anything else on Four Towns prep? Okay. Anybody know that they won't be able to make it on Saturday? Should all be there? Okay. Melody, you got a conflict? Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see. Oh, Marianne's here. Let's talk about the library budget. Thanks for joining us, Marianne.
Hi, I don't see any of my library trustees. And we were
Okay.
on the agenda for 7:30.
Yeah. Okay.
um,
So if you want, we can just juggle.
Do you
our
have other
agenda.
business you can
Yeah.
go on to and then come back
Yeah,
to me? Okay,
We've got a few
Uh,
things. Yeah.
okay,
Okay.
all righty.
All right. So we'll come back to you.
All right,
right.
thank you.
Next up is the MSBA boiler project funding. I think in our last meeting, Bob, you had volunteered to do some sort of follow-up research on kind of what's going on with this funding opportunity.
Becky and I got together and she contacted the MSBA.
Okay.
Arranged a meet between two representatives of that agency and the two of us. So we had a nice back and forth with them, and we got some information. So I was satisfied that I understood more about how the program worked and how this particular grant was constructed. And so I came away from it, and I don't know if Becky had the same conclusion, that this was not something that the town wants to pursue. It's a project. The concept of the grant seems to be for heating work. First of all, includes only things that are in the boiler room itself. So what I was thinking was that maybe we could somehow use this grant to do some useful work with the ventilation system or some other aspect of the HVAC in the school, and it would be useful and efficient and financially advantageous to the town. But this basically, we've replaced everything in the boiler room except for the boilers. And as far as I know, and I can tell at this point, the boilers are in fine shape. If one of them had a small leak, which was repaired, was a routine maintenance to repair the seal. There's no evidence that the boilers are rotted out or the water jackets are in any way degraded. So I think we can ride with the boilers we have, and the expense of us getting into this grant was going to be prohibitive, and we had to hire a project manager from the get-go and do some preliminary engineering, which was going to be quite expensive, according to what the people from the MSBA were telling us. Am I right there, Becky?
Yep,
And that would be on our dime?
It
yep,
would be on our time.
60 to
Some of it could be
100.
recouped if we got the grant, but we don't be going to get recouped at a 50% rate. So,
Yeah,
and
okay.
that may be more, but it was not something that we would know for a while. The other thing is, Becky pointed out, the state has been giving us towns guidance that they want us to be greener and all the rest of that. And one of the things that means is to abandon fossil fuels. So if we go in that direction, the last thing we want to do is invest $1 million in something that we want to get rid of, So I think we can hang in with our system. We're in pretty good shape. We just did all that work. My recommendation to the committee would be to recommend that we don't pursue this to the select board. I don't know if they need something from us, but that's my opinion. Any questions that Becky might be able to answer that, or I might be able to answer if you have them about what the grant looks like.
Yeah. Becky, that sounds like that was your assessment as well, right? Based on your comments in
Yeah,
previous
and-
meetings. Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't hear them really raise any new points at all at that
Okay.
meeting. So
All right.
what I had understood from my earlier conversations with them and what I tried to share with you guys.
Okay.
It's kind of discouraging, isn't it, Bob? Yeah, that they have all that money and we can't make use of it.
Yeah, it's no good for roofs. They don't want to give us a roof. Just want to give us something we really don't need. So go figure,
We could have done the roof for that money.
Yeah. Susie?
A sentence jumped out at me from the Doug Slaughter letter, talking about MSBA funding. And I don't know if they are so structured that when it says the MSBA was going to take a hiatus in funding, pause, excuse me. This year, the MSBA has paused the program for an undefined length of time. So no applications are currently being considered. So I guess that could be just for the roof, but here we are turning back this alleged boiler thing. I don't know if there's any, I don't know how they run their money, but like, how can they pause on roofs, really?
When there's so much money floating around, we just gave everybody in the state a little extra refund on their tax return, but we can't fund capital projects.
Yeah, it's baloney.
All right.
No money.
I don't think there's any action for us to take on this, right, Becky? Select board is
If you
presumably
would
on the
vote
same
the
page.
it would be good to have a
Okay.
vote on your recommendation to take to the select board. Or
Okay.
if you guys want to have somebody from finance committee go to a select board meeting just to explain your reasoning. that backs up the vote, it would be good to have.
All right. Bob,
I make a motion that we recommend, vote to not recommend pursuing the grant for the reasons I tried to explain. And then I'd be willing to explain my views, which to you now, and also I think maybe I've done that, and to the select board, that it's not really something that's beneficial to the town to pursue this grant at this point.
So it's the MSBA grant for the boiler.
For the boilers, yes.
all
Second,
right. Okay, any other discussion? I think, Bob, since you had the conversation, it would be great if you could communicate what you learned and what your assessment of the situation is to the select board. So thank you for volunteering to do that. Any other comments before we vote? All right, George,
Overnight aside.
Chartier, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, I.
Cashew, eye.
Mosher, aye.
Walton, I.
All right. I think we can talk about, I know that Becky sent a expense report out. Was that yesterday or? I think it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Did everybody get that?
Yep.
Yes.
We've got 9 minutes before we talk to the library, so maybe we can take a look at that. All right. All right, Jim.
Yes, I have a complaint about the way these reports are put together. Information is strewn all over the place. Just to give you an example, since we're talking about the library, references to the library and monies for the library occurred on page 6, 7, 10, 16, and 18. Why can't we put them all together? I think that the model, it certainly would be possible, because if you look at the broadband budget, which is on page 17, everything is there, all the categories. And so if one looks at it, one can see what what's happening with the broadband and get an overall picture. But whether it's the library or the recreation committee or recycling, the data is strewn all over the place. I find it very, very difficult to do it. And Becky, can the report be revised in such a way to sort of bring it, to that level? I just think it would be an awful lot easier to deal with.
Can I respond, AJ?
Sure.
Yes.
So the report is done by funds, by fund balances. So what you're asking is that all the funds be intermixed. And not all the funds have, and not only that, I mean, the recycling has a revolving fund. So you see most of all their expenses are in the revolving fund. I don't even think they're in the main budget anymore. But the library has savings accounts outside. The school has a budget line within the budget, and then it has a whole sheet of that represent the grants they receive. So as far from an accounting standpoint, no, the accountant can't combine all the topic. She can't combine it topically by library and school. It's because there's different sources for the money, and that's why it's broken out the way it is. A lot of towns just review the main budget, which is the first 4 or 6 pages. It used to be 4 or 6 pages. I don't know what it is now.
It's about that now.
I'd have to check, but so there's a very solid structural reason, Jim, that it's like this. And I think it was easier to identify in the old format because each each of the funds was on a separate page, and these tend to run more together to save room. So maybe we could try to break the funds into, have them start on new pages.
Well, that might,
help a little.
that might help a little bit. It just, to me, it's confusing and fishing around trying to find, just sort of see how it all relates together. I just wish that there was a way to bring it back to the way we've used to see them before.
And they were all on separate funds then, so I think.
Before, right?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, wasn't that the case in our old format too? We would
Yeah,
see the revolving
that part
funds
didn't
were
change,
all
but it's
listed
just
separately.
that-
Yeah, right.
They, a new page, you get to Fund 30, that was in a separate and new page. You get the trust funds, they're a separate new page, so you could, they were easier to spot. So I can ask.
Yeah, can we try that at
Yeah.
least for the next meeting and see if that helps? And
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I'm
would,
just not sure if she's able to, but I already, we had hoped that she could turn it vertically instead of the way it is. And she tried every format that was in the software templates and could not achieve that. So she's already reached out to find out if she can create a new format, if they can create a new format for us that turns it vertically. So I'll ask her to add also with the page separations by funds and see if we can get that done.
thank you.
George, did you have a?
No, that was it.
Comment
You
about
brought
that?
up the point that I was gonna make.
Okay. All right. So does anybody have questions about any of the kind of specific lines that we're seeing in this report? All right. So Susie?
I have sort of a out of the box thinking. I wonder if we had two people from the committee take charge of going through the whole expense thing, and could change which two people it is over time, but just they look through all these numbers. These pages are still hard for me to read. They're and I don't feel like I have the wherewithal to go through it and pull things out. And then when we do have it in the general meeting, it kind of jumps around. So I wondered if we had two people look at it and come up with the highlighted lines for our meetings, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. Bob?
I think that's a good idea, but I mean, essentially what we're doing now is that those people that have reviewed the document and highlighted some lines are going to present them to the other members who may not have noticed them or seen that information. So I think that works pretty well the way we're doing it. It gives us more eyeballs potentially. Personally, that's my view. So
I agree.
I wanted to ask Becky, I know we've been spending some money on Lotto 32 for engineering and environmental testing and all the rest. Where's that money shown in the expense report?
Is it in here? It's a lot of it is the ARPA money.
That's
The
the ARPA
majority
money?
of it has been the ARPA money and then a couple other smaller funds.
We definitely have some under general government in the operating budget.
Oh, yeah. So it's in the general government. It's in the.
Some of it is. I saw a line for it. Maybe it wasn't in general government, but I saw a line for it. I thought it was.
Yeah, page 6,
Page 6.
waste disposal.
Well,
Well,
I
there was
thought it was page 7.
no, it's page 6. It's in the middle. It's well, it's not in the middle. It's like the third total group. There's waste disposal lot 032 had a budget of 5725 and 2970 has been spent. So there's 2755 left. So roughly half of it's been spent. That's just the operating portion.
That was from last year.
Right.
And then
That was a
there
key.
some spent this year. So that was the balance of the funds that we spent last year.
That's the cut carryover. Okay.
So where do I see the expenses? We must be going through some money. You say it's coming out of ARPA? Becky?
Yeah, it's the ARPA, and I'm not sure if the all the transfers and everything is up to date on the ARPA.
How is that ARPA? I mean, isn't ARPA about the pandemic relief? Why is ARPA
And they
expended?
let us use it for
ARPA
anything.
Yeah, you can spend it on anything if you're community defined as we are.
They took all those restrictions off last year, Bob, because people
Yeah.
weren't spending the money.
No, it's how we were classified. We're so small. Like if you're Springfield or Greenfield, there's a different set of rules that you have to follow. The feds basically didn't want to deal with small towns in a very complicated manner, so they opened it up.
This is typical of the federal government. They don't want to deal with the complicated matter of understanding where their money's going.
Yeah.
I'm assuming
So
the
page
line
13,
on 13,
page
right?
13.
Yeah.
And there's some more expenses I think are in process. It shows an expense of 29,000 there. And then there's been, the 2,900 and the other part. I think there's another 20 that is not fully hit here that should be here soon.
That's already been expended. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Jim Hemingway?
Page 7, up at the very top, it says library 94,445, of which about half of it is spent, 45,753. Is this Lotto 32 expenditures? Or what is that line referring to?
That is the total library budget.
Didn't you
That's
go up
the
to,
summary line. If you go to bottom of page 6,
Right.
that you'll see that's the
Just
whole.
the sum of those four
All right,
lines. Yeah.
yeah. See, that's another part of these pieces are all over the place. I don't know. I hope we can make it a little bit easier to understand this report.
Yeah.
That's the problem I was having.
Susie?
The Friends of the Library also contributed to the Lot 032 expenses.
Yeah, and Mary Ann just gave me a full accounting today, so I can go back and reconcile against the budget sheets.
I can explain all of what has been budgeted for Lotto 32 if people wanted me to, and what's been spent so far and what's left.
I think
Maybe
they also,
we should get it in maybe we should just get it in writing so we can read it.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Mary Ann, everybody wanted to understand where it was in the budget itself, because it's a
Right.
19-page
it's
budget document.
It's almost all the ARPA funds.
Mm.
So
Mary Ann, is the Eric Stocker said at one of very, very recently that 55,000 has been spent on Lotto 32 so far. He was sort of angry about that. Is that true, or is that an accurate figure, or what?
let me look.
While we're waiting on that, were there any other lines on the expense report that anybody wanted to bring up? Becky, did you have something you wanted to?
I
alert us
just wanted to mention, I think most folks are aware that we received a notice of responsibility for PFAS at the fire station. And I have requested a proposal for anticipated work for this coming year from Ty and Bond, who has assisted us in getting started with the initial testing and has been helpful, and also the low bidder in the projects so far. So we will be trying to fund that. And as we get a sense of magnitude, I'll be coming back to the Finance Committee for strategies from you guys on how to fund the PFAS moving forward.
Okay.
So
Mary Ann?
far,
Yep.
that we're contracted for $52,000 worth of services. We haven't spent that much yet. But so far, that's what we're contracted for.
So that's what Eric Stocker was referring to, do you think?
Mhm.
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 52.
All right, Susie?
The PFAS story, especially around fire departments and airports, is going to be countrywide. Do you know if the state has taken this in? It is true, the DPW says we have a notice of responsibility, but I can't believe this isn't the case for fire stations all around the nation and at airports.
It just depends if you're lucky enough to have testing widespread in your community, and that helps facilitate that and got us a running start, so we're ahead of many neighbors.
So
But
the
a lot of
ostrich,
our neighbors are also finding problems.
right. So it's an ostrich in the sand for some people, and do we have any sense? I saw with Joe Comerford and some of the legislative things that PFAS is on the state's radar screen. Do you know if there's any way they're organizing their response?
I have not found it organized at this. I mean, there's many, DP is taking a lead. The fire marshals are involved. But I think we're really kind of wading into an issue that with all the library trustees here, maybe we could talk about after.
Okay. Yep.
All right, Bob?
One quick question to Becky.
Okay.
What the legal line must be getting stressed. I mean, I understand that the select board has hired outside counsel now, and so where's that headed? What are we going to anticipate there? Any idea?
It's hard to say if lawyers are only used for a short period of time here and things are wrapped up. Hopefully we can stay within the budgets we have, but I think we were already in a legal line issue with the normal things going on, and adding other issues, personnel issues, or any thing that comes up that we don't know about yet. We only have a few $1,000s left at this point. So I envision coming back to the finance committee for assistance.
Do the selectmen have a contract with the legal representative?
There was a same kind of document that was signed by the Conservation Commission. You know, when a law firm works with a town, they have to have an agreement with the town.
Right. So they have an estimate of $2,500 or something similar.
No, the number of hours, neither document states a number of hours limitation.
All right, I think we've got our library partners on, so let's shift gears and talk about their proposed budget for FY24. I can, let's see, oh no, I can't. Becky, do you want me to share my screen so I can pull it up?
Yeah. Sorry, AJ.
Okay, all right. I think my screen share, okay, now I got it. Let's see. All right. Hopefully everybody could see that.
Sure.
Hi, Mary Ann. So can you, you always do a great job of walking us through this. If you can do the same this year. We've got, what, 6 years worth of data on this
Right.
table is
Okay.
helpful.
Good.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah,
So hi, everybody. Thank you for having us tonight. We are asking for a level funded budget. But there's a little bit, so it's a little bit funny what we're asking for. So this fiscal year, the two people who work at the library happen to get longevity bonuses that equal $900. And last year we got, well, last year town meeting approved a pretty significant salary increase for the library director position, which is my position. So we had a pretty big budget increase, you know, much bigger than we usually have. And so we don't need a budget increase to maintain our state certification. But in order to maintain our state certification, we're required to spend 20% of our operating budget on materials. And that is now about $19,000 and on circulating materials. And so we got a big salary increase, but we didn't get any increase in our operating, you know, in our acquisitions line or our expense line. So what do we call that? Our ATM operating allocation. So we're proposing this year, adding that $900 to the operating allocation, bringing that up to $20,756, and then giving us a level funded budget of $94,445. As you can see, it's still not enough. You know, so in that operating allocation, it would be enough to cover the materials, but you know, we spend you know, $4,000 to $5,000 on things like office supplies. So there's special tape and special labels and covering for books and barcodes and occasionally a printer or a chair. Last year I had to buy a printer and a chair. You know, I really need to get a new telephone, all of those things. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room in our budget. We used to have a pretty healthy revolving fund. We don't collect fines anymore. So we really just get a tiny little bit of money from, you know, copier and fax fees. And if somebody loses or damages a book, and then they pay for it. And so we just get the dog tax money. So that's our request. Do you have any questions?
So I just want to make sure I'm reading the table correctly. So, I mean, I'm seeing not a level funded, well, I see a reduction in expenditures, but you're saying the difference between your total expenditures for FY23 and FY24, you would like to budget an increase in your materials or your acquisitions
Right.
line to cover
Right,
that difference. Is that
right.
So
Yeah.
okay. So the proposed budget for FY24 is $121,697, right? The same amount as last year.
No,
I'm not reading
No,
that right?
the budget, so the budget that we're proposing for fiscal year 24 is 129,910. If that
Okay.
adds up right, I'm seeing that it's the 129,697. So what would be the difference?
Dollars for longevity.
Okay, and then let's see.
And
I
then
guess
it's like,
Oh, so we're getting a little bit less money from the Council on Aging. The Council on Aging is having other people competing for their funding, so I'm sort of counting on less. And I'm, you know, I put in a little bit less for the New Salem Academy grant. But actually, since I made this document, I got a bigger grant from them. So I'm, you know, and let's see. So that one went up, and then the New Salem Academy and the Friends amount went down a little bit. And the Council on Aging went down a little bit, but But anyway, so it's really the amount that we're asking for from the town that I'm
Right.
concerned about. I can, I'll continue to look for little grants to pay for programs and and we can always ask the Friends of the Library to chip in more. But we really want them focusing on raising money for the new building if they can.
Okay.
So,
All
so
right,
we'll.
so understood. So it's it's the town meeting request that's level
Right,
from.
right.
Okay, I
Yes,
understand now.
yes.
Brad, did you have you're on mute.
I think you just picked up what I was going to say. When Marianne's talking about level funding, we're really talking about that ATM total line.
Right.
Like the previous
got it.
discussion we were having about the town budget and stuff being all over the place.
Yeah.
This budget has the town portion there, the ATM total. And then
Right.
there's all sorts of other sources of funding which grow and
Revenue,
shrink.
yeah.
And so that's a better line. That 94,445 is the better line to look at.
I get it now. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's open it up for any questions or comments from committee members. Okay, Bob?
Yeah, I looked at the budget and I looked at it historically, and I've done this in the past. You might surprise everyone to know that around 2004, the budget for the library was about $20,000. So if you look historically at the town's levy over time, and I've done that I provided the committee with some numbers that I extracted from my records here. The town levy has increased 23.6% over 10 years between 13 and 22. The town budget has increased something less than that. I assume that the difference at 17%, which I assume the difference is that we've gotten less money from state chapter 70 or something. I don't know what that means. I haven't drilled into that, but 17% for our budget increase over 10 years, 23.6% for our levy to our residential tax base. And then the library in the same period increased 55.5%, which is way, way ahead of the town's budget. And that's a significant fact, it seems to me. This is before we build a new library. This is with our famously small library. So, that concerns me if we're trying to maintain some fiscal responsibility to our taxpayers, that we're getting that kind of increase. We don't get it from other departments. I've studied it. I don't have the data for the police and the fire station, but some of the other departments, the school has been going level, even though they've been losing enrollment. They haven't grown their budget that much, despite they've kept pace with the town's growth in its budget, I think, pretty much. But that concerns me. That's a significant increase, and I can only imagine it's going to increase further when we get a new building over there. So I don't know what we can do about that. The way that I hear about this budget every year is that because we're a member of the Association of Libraries, that we have to fund these increases of 2.5%. This is far more than 2.5%. This year's increase is, let's see, like I said, it's well,
It's not.
It's level
No.
funded.
Yeah, I'm not following, Bob.
12.9%
The level funded budget.
in the budget, ATM budget from last year.
Yes, it's level
No.
funded.
It's level funded. It's not increasing at all.
It's not. 12.9% is the difference in the numbers. Last year was 79.67. No, excuse me, 83.633.
That's 2 years.
You're
ago.
Last year
you're
was
going back a few years ago.
94.5.
FY22, right? That's what it says right here. ATM meeting.
But last year was FY23. Yeah, you're missing last year's budget.
Okay.
You're missing the FY23. If you look at the budget document that's being shared right now, you'll see that the proposed town meeting allocation is 94,445, which is exactly the same amount that was allocated last year.
I guess what went up to last year's was the 12.9% increase. Okay,
Salary.
stand corrected.
Mhm.
Sit corrected. But 55% over a 10-year period is still a legitimate, that's what the math indicates. That's a lot.
Kate?
I'm
Kate,
sorry, I had a
you're on
hard
mute.
time
Yeah.
getting off mute. I
No
apologize for
problem.
that.
No worries.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, AJ. I just want to point out some changes in services that also happened over that time. I don't believe we had a full-time librarian at that point. Marianne, correct me if I'm wrong. And I don't think that we were open every day at that point. I'm pretty sure we weren't.
A full-time
So
librarian.
we did have a full-time librarian. Okay, I beg your pardon. But we certainly, I know that we've increased hours of availability and being open during the time that I've been on the Board of Trustees, which is 11 years at this point. And I know that we have expanded our services beyond just our open hours. And I guess the other thing that we are continuing to do that Marianne does really rigorously is seek other funding. And I think you can see that really clearly every year. And this year, that's what's making it possible for us to increase the overall budget without increasing our request from town meeting. Thank you.
Marianne?
Yeah, so I just want to say that I'm really proud of the library services that we provide. And since 2012, when the town chose to decline the library construction grant, I've really strived to provide the library services that the town would enjoy in a larger building, despite our lack of facilities. So programming has grown. When I started as library director 15 years ago, there was no culture of library programming. There wasn't even a weekly story time. Now we have a weekly story time. We offer museum passes. Right now we have 4 fitness programs a week, even though we don't have a facility to offer them in. We're starting to slowly offer in-person programming using borrowed spaces like we did before the pandemic. So yes, the library's budget has expanded, and Bob started with 2004. That's almost 20 years ago. But when I started as library director in January of 2008, it was a 24-hour-a-week position, and then it went up to 30 hours a week, and then it went up to 40 hours a week. I will tell you that when I was paid to work 24 hours a week, it was expected that I would work 40 hours a week. When I was paid to work 30 hours a week, it was expected that I was working a full-time job. So the library budget has increased along with the services. I think the services have increased, exponentially compared to the actual operating budget. And I'm really proud of the services that we provide, and I'm really appreciative of the town's support for the library. And I know that the townspeople are too. So thank you.
Thank you. Melody?
Yes, I don't mean this facetiously. I mean it really because I don't understand it. Under the revenue, the dog tax line, based on the FY22 actual and the budget FY23 and 24, does the dog population in Shutesbury really gone down that much? I don't understand why it dropped from 2151 to 850.
That'd be something to ask the town clerk, because she's the person that collects the fees.
Oh, okay.
But it's also what goes to the library is net of the dog keeper's expenses too. So if there were more, I think there were a lot more issues of having to house dogs at the vet. I think the issue was there were more expenses that reduced what was the balance for the library.
And also that line is also dog tax and library fines and fees collected at the library. So it's not just that amount. And then the other thing that happens with the dog tax money is that it doesn't always get transferred along the fiscal year lines. It might get transferred in October, or it might get transferred in May. So it doesn't always show up in the budget when we expect it to. So I haven't looked yet to see what the dog tax, what the library got for dog tax this fiscal year. Because I can't figure out how to read those expense reports. But
That's my fault.
We're all getting there.
When I was working on
Yes.
the budget with Mary Ann, tried to clean up lines that weren't necessary to be split out, and I combined the revolving fund and the dog tax. And we haven't had the revolving fund in a while. I don't think dog tax has changed that much. What we had was fines and such for a while, and then they stopped.
I see. Let's see, Susie.
Another aspect of this budget is that the personnel board reviewed the department head salaries and recommended an increase, a significant increase for Mary Ann's library director, and that was voted by the town. So that is not here we're not here to pull that apart.
Wasn't that the prior year?
It was in 2023.
Last year, right?
23.
Yeah, I guess I hear us having a lot of discussion about prior years. Which normally this process, we usually just talk about the current year's budget proposal and how it goes versus history. I guess I'm sort of surprised we're digging into old history on this library process. Especially when we're looking at basically a flat budget this year.
Jim Hemingway.
Yes, Mary Ann, I'm sure you're aware of the fact that nationwide interest in library and library services has fallen year after year after year. What do you attribute? We seem to be going in the opposite direction, according to you. What do you attribute that to?
So Jim, I don't think that that's true. I think that library services are actually increasing nationwide. When I see statistics about library usage, I see that library usage, it's evolving, but that people are using libraries. And then I think library usage has increased in Shutesbury, partly because of my efforts to respond to community demand. So when people ask me for services, I try to provide them. Another thing that's different, and I forget what year it was either 2011 or 2012, we became CW Mars members. That increased circulation like in a snap, 30%. So I think it in Shutesbury, it's the library's culture of being responsive to community interest and community needs and community demands. And then it's the library's culture of reaching out to the community and marketing the library to the community, so that people know what services are available to them. And And then it is the community responding to the library services and using the services and then asking for more. It's the community seeing what kinds of services are available in other places and asking for it here too. But I do not, it's not true that the trends among libraries that library use is decreasing across the country. In fact, the opposite is true.
Well, that I'm not, I can't cite chapter and verse on this, but this has been in the New York Times and Boston Globe and elsewhere. There have been these surveys that revealing that that the general use of libraries in the country is steadily falling. Maybe it has a lot to do with broadband, because so many services that the library used to provide, walk-in services, are no longer necessary because people have their computers and they do a lot of what they used to do at a library at home. But this has been a national trend. I'm just pointing this out. I think we all have stumbled across these references from time to time in the last year or so. But that's I'm just reporting on what I've been seeing in the papers and in the media about library. We seem to be moving. Shutesbury is moving in the opposite direction.
And Jim, I disagree with you. I think the data is showing just the opposite. And when you see what's happening around us across the state, libraries are expanding to meet the need. So just right here in Western Massachusetts, Shutesbury is building a new library to meet increased library need. The town of Amherst is expanding their library to meet increasing library need. The town of Deerfield is expanding their library to meet increased library need. The town of Greenfield is almost finished building a brand new library to meet increased library need. The city of Belmont voted last week to build a new library to meet increased library need. The town of Gloucester voted last month to expand their library to meet increased library need. It's not just Shutesbury, Jim. It's all across the state and it's all across the country.
Well, I think you ought to take another look. Maybe Massachusetts in our local area here is spending a lot of money on libraries and library usage, but that's not true nationwide. And it seems to me also, in looking at the money that's been that the Commonwealth has appropriated for library, for the library funds, I haven't looked at this year's numbers, but last year's numbers, I think they did a multi-million-dollar cut. I don't have this at my fingertips, the numbers and everything, but there just seems to be some conflicting trends here. That's all I'm saying.
Actually, no, the state budget lines did very well last year and then had increases this year. So statewide, the state is supporting libraries on a statewide basis, and towns across the state are supporting their libraries, including, and in our challenging financial times, almost every library that received MBLC funding for new construction last July has voted to move forward.
Brad?
Backing up Marianne, the data I've seen nationwide, statewide, region-wide is mostly an increase in need and an increase in library funding. I've not been seeing what you've been reporting, Jim. I'm not sure where your data has come from. I disagree with that data.
Right. Any other questions for the library team? All right. Susie?
Just want to say thank you to Marianne and the Board of Library Trustees for designing a level funded request for town meeting to work with.
Yep. Yes, that is appreciated. All right. Thanks for joining us, Marianne, and all the library trustees that are in the room. welcome to stay on if you'd like, but we won't be offended if you sign off as well.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Let's see. I think the only things left for us to discuss are any committee updates or any other updates from committee members that they wanted to share, and then we can just make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of next meetings. So any committee updates? No. Becky, I'm wondering, I can't remember when capital planning first met last year, but I feel like it's probably around this time, right? Have you heard anything from Ellen about
I have
plans
been,
for?
I requested a date from her and she said she'll get
Okay.
it to me this week, so
Okay, all right,
hopefully
got
everybody
it.
can make that date.
Okay. Bob? Oh, you're on mute.
I don't have the next FinCom meeting on my calendar, the one that's, I thought we
Okay.
had some long discussion last time about potential meeting in late December or,
So we have an open date. Well, we have the Four Towns meeting on Saturday, and then our next meeting, next
Wednesday.
full committee meeting would be Wednesday, December 21st,
Yes.
which was an open date on our schedule of budget reviews. I think it remains open. I don't think we've pushed anybody. So,
Was that gonna
That
be
is our next-
Wednesday? Was that gonna be Wednesday, AJ, or Tuesday?
oh
Or
wait, maybe I misspoke.
Wait a minute.
I know it's the 21st. Is that
That's a
I think
Wednesday.
it was
that
Wednesday,
is a
because-
Wednesday.
but select board meets on Tuesday.
Right.
That's why you guys
Okay.
did Wednesday.
That's
Oh,
why
okay.
it was. Okay,
All
yeah.
right.
Susie?
Will we might have free cash certified by December 21st, Becky?
We should, I hope so, yeah.
So we'll start, I think I would like to meet on the 21st because we can sort of do a post-mortem on for towns, and we can start having a sense of where we are in terms of free cash. We won't know all the proposals coming in from capital planning yet, although no, we probably won't. But and then we might be able to have some sort of discussion about the draft budget that the school has forwarded, and they might even, no, they won't have another one by then because they are not meeting in December. That's but we might have a discussion a little bit about some aspects of it.
Okay, so
Um,
so sort of a preliminary discussion before our budget review with the school committee. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have some
That's-
information from when I heard them discuss it the first time.
Okay. Becky?
Susie, do you expect significant changes to that budget?
No, I will probably try to find out from Dan if the U28 budget got set. But no, I don't expect big changes, but she wanted to say very clearly that it's a preliminary draft.
Okay.
But they're not going to meet with the finance committee in the beginning of January.
Right, we
Yeah, change
realized
between-
that they're not going to meet until January 17th. So we talked about scheduling our review with them for January 31st, which is another
First, that,
open scheduled time. So we should clarify that to ourselves, and then we can clarify it to them.
yeah.
That's really, really late.
21st, is
meet
that it?
them.
Right. And so them not meeting in December was kind of like, really? Okay,
Mhm.
but they're trying it.
All right. Well, so that preliminary budget is on the Google Drive. I would ask everybody to review that before December 21st. We'll at least have a preliminary discussion about that. If there are any sort of important questions that come up, that'll, then I think there'll be an opportunity for Susie to forward those to the school committee before their January meeting.
Right.
George?
Nothing. I don't have anything.
Okay. So no committee updates, sounds like. All right. Is there anything? So everybody's clear on our next couple of meetings, Four Towns meeting, Saturday, the 16th, 17th.
17.
And next committee meeting is on December 21st. We'll do a Four Towns debrief, preliminary discussion of the school budget, free cash certification, and we'll see what other topics there are.
And everybody's aware of the new tax rate?
Yeah.
And the final came in at 18.44, down
Oh,
from 18.49.
What was the final increase in the average single family home property tax bill?
I can't tell you, I have to look that up.
Oh, that's okay. No, that's all right. We'll find out.
Yeah.
The state's going to publish it all. It's all going to be published on the web, and we'll see it then. I think it's going to be more than the $96 that we read in our minutes. I think it's going to be more like 125, 130.
Okay.
But
Well,
we'll
it
see.
might not be if it's,
I think it's not going to be more.
yeah,
Because
because
the rate came down to 5 cents, or?
yeah,
Well, the rate came down, but I think the average property tax bill actually went up
but nothing changed after the rate went down.
from fiscal 22 to fiscal 23. I'm referring to. I'm fiscal 23 to fiscal 22. The average single family home increase tax bill is going to be about 120, over 120 to 130.
Okay. And George,
So-
that you're basing that on the updated
18.49?
tax rate we just got?
I went to the state's website and the dashboard, and it's published, and I think it was 126. Yeah, it's there, but a lot of
Okay.
towns are not there. They're just throwing them up
No,
as
it's
they're
great,
getting the
it's there. I didn't
recaps.
think it'd be there so quick.
Yeah, I was shocked. I checked it earlier this week and it was there. And it was higher than the 96. I think it was 126. But I wait because I want all the towns to come in and then we can see how we rank and all that,
Yeah.
But I did take a look at ours, and our number was 6,070, and this year was 5,964. So yeah, I don't quote me on those numbers, but it's definitely higher by about 126. But if you read the Gazette every day, there's a different town.
Did you say 5,964 to 6,070?
Something like that. Yeah, I could probably.
That's only $106.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying don't quote me, because I realized when I said it, maybe it was 90, maybe it was 60, 90,
All right,
but
well-
it was 126. But I'll tell you what, I'll bring that. It's 60, 90. I've got it right here. I actually wrote it down. So this year it was 5,964. Last year, this year, current fiscal year, it's 6,090. Last fiscal year it was 5,964. So it's an increase of $126. Yeah, I did write it down, so I'm glad I did that. But so that's what it is. But if you read the paper and you read about every single town around us, Hadley yesterday was in the paper. They're all 200 to 400. They're all much higher in their annual increases. So we did pretty well this year, I think.
Becky,
Let's go to Susie and then Bob, was this
And
a follow?
I find the newspaper coverage annoying because it doesn't talk about it in a sound way. It talks about, the values are shooting up. It doesn't say, and the budgets did this and the rate then did this. It's a three-part formula, and they act like every time it's a
They never
news
get it
story.
right. They never get it right, and they never explain it properly. And they're
Right.
quoting assessors, and they make a quote, and people misunderstand it.
And they're doing it
100%.
for headline value and to shock people. And
Yes.
it's not fair. It makes people more ignorant. And I'm
The Springfield Republican, Susie, the Springfield Republican, year after year was reporting the highest tax rates in the state. 17 of the communities are from Western Mass. No kidding.
Yeah,
Because our
The
property
values
values
are
are half
low.
of what they are in Boston.
right, right.
Very
So it's-
misleading.
It's not new, but it's because the values all across the valley shot up. That's
Yeah.
what they decided to make headlines over and over and over. It's like, stop it.
Yep.
Bob?
Becky mentioned that we're no longer the highest tax rate. So who's higher than us, Pelham?
I think it was Susie that brought it up tonight. I haven't seen, I don't think I don't think Pelham's final.
Not everybody's rates are
I
up.
don't think
yet.
Leverett's is final either.
I'm just saying that it'd be interesting to see, and it'd be very disappointing if, because of our high-speed internet and our massive increase in valuation, that we get screwed by the statutory method.
But again,
Well,
the
gee,
tax rate doesn't mean anything. It's just a factor.
Yeah, it's the average tax bill.
It's meaningless. Amherst, what the meaningful number is Amherst is paying over $3,000 per single family home than what we pay for property taxes.
Yeah, oh yeah, well, I think the average tax bill in Amherst were at $400 here.
no, they actually had to fix that. They misspoke and then they went back and I
25,
don't know where it
350.
landed. So, it's just there's a lot of noise right now and we have to wait. I'll look at the dashboard. I think that will be helpful.
It will.
Yeah.
Amherst went up to 350. They did correct it, but their assessor came out and said the average single family home is now paying $350 more a year.
A lot. Well, okay, well, I'm done.
All right. Yeah, I guess I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Overnight aside.
George?
Charter, aye.
Groves, aye.
Hemingway, aye.
Cashew, aye.
Mosier, aye.
Walton, I.
Thanks, everybody. See you Saturday
All
morning.
right, bright and early.
You all have, you all have a good evening.
Good
You
night.
too.
All right.
Good
Take
night.
care.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good night,
night.
Bob.